And Cobra's really tough, you know. And Cobra's up to something that with G.I. Joe.
Cobra! Cobra blew up the bridge! Bridge layer to the rescue! The ice cycle will catch us!
Introducing the new Joes, Barbecue and Shipwreck.
We're gonna stop Cobra this time!
G.I. Joe!
After him! Yo,
G.I. Joe Bridge Layer comes with driver, or Striker comes with driver. Other figures and equipment sold separately from Hasbro.
Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to another episode of Battle of the Network shows. I'm Mike, and I'm here with Rick, and today we're going to talk about an episode of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero.
Yeah, G.I. Joe, an interesting show, and this, I guess, A Real American Hero was the first main G.I. Joe cartoon in the mid-'80s. It came out and was syndicated, and as I went back and watched this episode, I sort of had the realization that while G.I. Joe was a big presence in my life growing up, as far as the toys, comic books, cartoons, and just a pop culture phenomenon, I didn't actually watch the show very much. I think my friends watched it, we all knew of it, and I know of it being on, but I don't really have much of a strong memory of individual G.I. Joe episodes. It's more maybe some of the characters or some of the moments, some of the toys. And so this is kind of, going back to this was, a lot of this is a little bit new territory for me as far as actually watching the cartoon. When I was a kid, I was more watching older cartoons and not some of the stuff that was syndicated like G.I. Joe. But how about you? Were you watching this regularly at the time?
Yeah. That said, I don't remember any individual episodes very well.
Well, that may not be...
Yeah, there was like the first year the toys were out, a friend or a neighbor got me a couple for my birthday. Like I'd seen commercials and stuff, but wasn't that interested in it, and Star Wars toys were still coming out, and that was, the big thing for me. But once I had a couple,
yeah,
it started, and then I started reading the comic book pretty soon after that. And yeah, I watched at least the first season of the cartoon. Kind of looking at the dates and stuff surprised me that the regular series didn't start till 1985.
Yeah, I would have guessed maybe a little bit earlier.
Yeah, the toys started in 82. The cartoon, in 83, they did a kind of unprecedented, they did a mini-series for like a week on, in syndication, like stripped 5 days, and it was a 5-part story that involved all these MacGuffins and stuff. I remember them fighting giant tube worms, and
yeah, I don't remember that
which
at all.
Has stuck with me because I see things about giant tube worms, and you can never get a real sense of how big they are. On the show, they were literally giant.
Wow.
And I think the real ones are fairly big. When you think of it being a worm, it's big, but these are like monsters.
Yeah.
And then I think the year after that, they did another miniseries. And then the regular series had a third, like, 5-part story that I think I read it aired in primetime.
What?
And then the series kicked off.
Wow.
So, and like, in my mind, G.I. Joe predated He-Man, and yet that cartoon was on before the regular series of G.I. Joe.
Yeah, I would have the same perception.
So I think the toys predated it.
Well, to me, G.I. Joe was primarily like a toy thing, which
Right.
is funny because, you assume that the cartoon was there to sell the toys, but for me, it was like, well, there's the toys, and there's a cartoon that's based on the toys.
Yeah.
And of course, there was the original G.I. Joe, which was more like a doll,
Right.
action figure version of a doll, basically. And then these were like more like the Star Wars size, the Star Wars scale, like 4-inch or less than 4-inch that became popularized by Star Wars. So
Right.
this was, figures and vehicles and all that, and
Yeah.
and apparently a prestige event miniseries,
Yeah.
which I have no idea about, but
And some of the toy commercials and commercials for the comic books, which that alone is kind of weird, had little bits of animation in them, like even before the show started. And I kind of remember even before I was interested in the toys, like just that catching my attention and like wanting to see those commercials because they had 10 seconds
Yeah.
of animation or something. And you know, I don't know, it has an interesting history in terms of a lot of just the development of the toy and the comic. And I didn't know until recently, and then rereading some stuff for this, that like Marvel Comics, they were involved in the development of the toy, so they were there from the start, and a lot of the ideas were based on ones that Larry Hama, who wrote the comic, had developed for a Shield type series, and they just morphed into this when they got this property, and he wrote. I mean, he came up with a lot of ideas for the characters, and you know, the action figures had these file cards on the back that gave a little biography and sort of their specialties and stuff, and he wrote most of those. And I think editor Archie Goodwin came up with the idea of Cobra. Like, they wanted a villain, which apparently Hasbro was not super comfortable with.
Huh.
Like, they didn't think that would sell.
Really?
So, like, the first line of toys only had, like, 2 Cobra figures.
Wow.
You know, and they were just generic. One was an officer and one was a soldier, but they're essentially the same figure.
Yeah. Now Hasbro, like Kenner was the one that made the Star Wars toys,
Yeah.
right? So, but you would think that they would look in some trade journal or see. I'm assuming that Darth Vader toys, for example, sold very well.
Right, yeah.
And Stormtroopers and
yeah.
endless variants of villains that Star Wars made. So that seems a little ridiculous to me. But you know, it's not my money. It's Hasbro's money, I guess. But
Yeah. And of course, Hasbro owns Kenner now.
yeah.
And the toys had, you know, they were sort of, maybe not advantage, but they had a lot of articulation that Star Wars figures didn't have. And, you know, they introduced swivel arm battle grip, which allowed the arm to actually cross over, like, the chest, or, you know, maneuver in another, not just up and down, but right and left.
It's for backhand slaps and
Yeah.
you know, fanning away mustard gas or something.
Right.
Or,
Which, you know, they introduced in the second series of figures, allowing them to reissue all the first figures.
nice. Now with
Well,
swivel
yeah.
grip.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And,
Well,
and luckily, the first one's also, their thumbs broke off a lot. So there was a need to get a new one.
really,
Yeah, their thumbs would break and then they couldn't hold their guns.
I did not know that. I was always like real bad about keeping accessories and guns,
Yeah.
like little pistols that came with them. As a matter of fact, I'd often not discard them, but I would kind of downplay those because they were just kind of a pain.
Yeah,
To me, they just kind of got in the way. So
that's true.
they wouldn't have suckered me into buying an extra one just because of the thumb breaking. But I could see wanting to get one if you
Yeah.
wanted it to hold a gun
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
or a hand grenade. Or,
well, they looked weird without, the hand just looked, nothing against thumbless people, but
no,
it just,
hard to give a
I mean, it does, now you think, well, it could be a battle wounded character.
That's right.
or something. And now the other thing for me is that even with Star Wars toys, like my brother and I tended not to actually play Star Wars with them. Like, they were just a vehicle for something like superhero ideas or other ideas. And so G.I. Joe was an extension of that. Like, some of them, the more sci-fi looking ones, could be good superheroes, or we could use them as, you know, the secret identity of someone whose regular figure was like a robot, you know, a Star Wars robot or something.
Okay.
Or I know I made up at some point, inspired by the A-Team, you know, a team of mercenaries. So whatever the value of the toys was, kind of, some of it was their look.
Yeah.
Even though I'm gonna diss the look of some of the ones in this episode.
I like the idea of you and your brother using the toys and combining with that miniseries and making like Winds of War action figures with the G.I. Joe toys, or like G.I. Joe figures as the Thornbirds or something
Right.
like that, and have one guy be, you know, Richard Chamberlain, and sort of making your own little real dramatic miniseries with these G.I. Joes. Did you ever do that?
No.
Oh, okay. That's too bad. Well, maybe you can dig those up someday and recreate.
They're all gone.
What a shame.
I'm trying to figure out. I might have given away the G.I. Joe ones. I know our parents gave away our Star Wars figures, like, when I was in college. Not happy about that.
Well,
Not that I can do anything about it now, but
no, you could snap them up off eBay or something, or recollect them, and not gonna happen. Okay.
I don't think so. I don't need.
So now G.I. Joe here, for some people might not have grown up watching the cartoon, or
Yeah.
you sort of now this version of GI Joe is an anti-terrorism task force, correct?
Right.
Is it, so it's like a quasi-military, or I guess it's a
It is.
military.
It's
It's an
like
offshoot of the military,
It's like a
joint task.
joint task force.
Okay.
Because they have members of every branch.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have any Coast Guard, but they might, because there was a hovercraft
Okay.
driven by a guy in a Boston Red Sox hat. It was a cool vehicle.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing. Somewhere around this period, our parents started giving us kind of, in retrospect, excessive allowance for not doing a ton of stuff. Or like walking the dog and cleaning the bathroom and a few
Yeah.
other things. And so I could go and I think the idea was to teach us the value of money. It taught me, well, once I get money, I can go buy the thing I want.
Yeah. So you'd go right out and buy a toy with it.
Yeah, so I had a lot of I didn't have the famous, $100 aircraft carrier, but I did have like big vehicles that were $20, $30.
Wait a minute, $100 aircraft? That's like the retail price at the time was $100.
Yeah, but it was huge. I mean, it was an aircraft carrier.
Wow.
So, I don't think I ever saw it. Maybe in the store once, but
Once did it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it plated with gold or something?
it was huge. It was
Still, $100
They could-
is a lot of.
because
clams back then.
The audience won't see this, but the jet they had was like this long,
Yeah.
and
He's
the
holding his
picture-
arms very wide apart.
yeah, and saw pictures just like yesterday of the aircraft carrier, and it could hold at least 2 of those on the deck,
Yeah.
which of course is not close to scale, but it's still a lot,
Yeah. You'd have to have a pretty big basement or something to play with that, probably.
Yeah.
Adequately, or
yeah.
an
Which we
outdoor kind of
did,
thing.
but even I was sensible enough to.
You could get like
I can't ask for that.
Yeah, you get like 25 figures or something with that kind of money.
That's true. So anyway, and I read the comic, I think I read the first 100 issues, and then I kind of quit. It was around the time I quit the toys, and just it had gotten a little too stupid.
A little too stupid.
Yeah. Like it started off kind of semi-realistic,
Yeah.
and by the time the cartoons were really coming out, like these cartoons, it was already getting silly, and then they introduced this Serpentor character, who was like a new leader for Cobra, who was cloned from like 5 of the greatest military leaders
Right.
in the world, in history. And I read something too, like there's some like weird other, like he's part some other species or something too.
Yeah.
And he walked around with like a giant cobra mask on.
Okay. So I'm waiting for the stupid part to kick in. And after that, it got stupid.
And well, this won't help either. There was I believe the scientist who helped them work that out, Dr. Mindbender,
Okay.
was bald and had a giant mustache and a monocle. Does that help? A cape?
I kind of like that idea.
I think he might have been shirtless.
Was he voiced by Charles Nelson Riley?
I don't think so.
Dr. Mindbender. Yeah, I don't remember this thing. I can see that would be that does represent a bit of a change of direction, I guess, for the GI Joe universe.
Yeah, which is a history I read last night, a history of it, quoted like Larry Hama is saying in the letter pages of the comic that he was already saddled with stupid characters like Serpentor, and there are these weird twins that are part of Cobra that I forget what their deal is, but so I don't think he liked that, and it sounded like that Serpentor idea kind of came from the advertising agency and
Gotcha.
through the cartoon back to the comic. And the cartoon is definitely sillier than the comic.
Okay.
The comic, I think, probably holds up okay for the most part, and has a famous like silent issue that was a big deal at the time.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that, not
Yeah.
reading it, but yeah. So the comic holds up well today.
I think so.
The cartoon,
I'll say this about the cartoon before we get into the episode. Like as a kid, I remember thinking the animation was like a huge step up from like Super Friends and stuff. And then, I'd seen something, a few episodes here and there, and thought, well, it's not as good as I thought it was, but in terms of the animation.
yeah.
But then, Community did that episode, which is great, the parody episode. And they threw a lot of things in there that I didn't see. Like, I watched this episode and another episode that I was considering, and I didn't see any of the sort of, like, repeated uses of the same animation or
Right.
some of those
Continuity
kind
errors
of limited animation, goofy things that do happen, but I didn't see that.
Yeah.
So I think, maybe either as it went on, it got a little less quality, or, they're kind of conflating it with like Filmation cartoon,
Right.
A lot of different cartoons.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. A lot of the competition or, the contemporary shows of this version of G.I. Joe, they were all cranking out shows for, to be shown 5 times a week and
Yeah.
making batches of 65 or whatever. And there wasn't a whole lot of great TV animation at the time.
Right.
I mean, certainly you see some of the adventure action cartoons that have come out like in recent years, like stuff like the Justice League ones.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole another level.
Right.
However, as you go back and watch this, I mean, if you kind of understand, like in the context of the times and what else was on TV, it's not totally terrible.
No, and I think it's better overall than, say, Spider-Man is Amazing Friends.
Yeah.
Like, I like the designs on that better now. I realize, I'm looking at John Romita drawings, basically, or even Super Friends, and you realize all the kind of well-renowned artists who helped design those characters and stuff. But I think they're still, it looks pretty good. Some parts looked worse than others, but then, and a lot of talented people worked on the writing end, like a lot of Bronze Age comic book writers who had moved on to TV and stuff, like Steve Gerber and Marty Pasco, and I think Roy Thomas wrote an episode, and Jerry Conway wrote 1 or 2.
Right, Bronze Age being about roughly like the 1970s, early 80s-ish.
Yeah. So the people who, especially, I think, most of those guys at some point worked at Marvel, like in the post-Stanley era, but, so still the Marvel age, but, yeah, talented people, but they still had to, they were still making toy commercials, which is another thing. So part of the history too is that there were like strict FCC regulations, and this being the Reagan era, some of those regulations went away. So as long as they didn't literally shill for the toy in the cartoon, they could make a cartoon based on a toy now.
Okay.
Where in the past it was sort of, you could make a toy based on a cartoon, but you couldn't.
Right, in the 80s, that whole toy cartoon thing exploded.
Right.
With all sorts of ridiculous cartoons based on, sketchy.
So there's He-Man and G.I. Joe and Thundercats, and those are like the 3, Gem and
Right. Now,
Transformers.
Those are examples. They're definitely like toy-based cartoons, but those are things where you could see like a universe and you could see like a justification for 65 episodes. But something like, Monchi-Cheese, did that really need an animated series? Probably not. But yeah, the 80s was really big, it seemed like, for
What was the thing with
cartoons shilling toys.
It was like the animals that wore T-shirts.
Shirt tails.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which were, and those were based on like Hallmark or some sort of greeting card to animals. Like it wasn't even like a toy line. They were like.
Okay, yeah, but then the toys probably came out, I think, after when they. I think they had some kind of stuffed line in conjunction with the.
Yeah. But and maybe even those were being produced, but not in the same. They were to buy with your greeting card, not to get in your Easter basket or something. Not
right.
Regular toy. Yeah.
But you get like popples and things like this, and everything would have some kind of toy component. So.
And then I heard an interview on Word Balloon with Marty Pasco, and he said, that they were doing exactly what they were accused of on G.I. Joe, which was the ad agency who is one of the producers of the show, would come and say, here are the toys that are coming out at this time, so they need to be in the stories now, which is, I think, one of the flaws of once you're into the series, because the toys, they're highlighting characters who maybe aren't as interesting as some of the earlier characters.
Mm-hmm. Because they want to drive sales of these new figures.
Yeah. And vehicles and all of that. So do you want to get into the episode now?
Yeah, 20 questions, and 20 questions is the name of the episode, and it's also the name of a show within a show in this one, right?
Oh, that's right.
So we've got journalist Hector Ramirez.
Yeah.
I'm assuming he's intended to be reminiscent of someone.
I think so.
He's intended to be Hispanic, despite, I'm assuming, being played by one of the same voice actors that's doing a lot of the other.
Right, yeah.
He's got a mustache.
Yeah.
He's ambitious, shall we say.
Yep.
He has his eyes on, big ratings and big things, and he's there to do a story.
Yeah.
And actually, he and his crew, which basically consists of one camera person and a hanger-on from an interest group that we can get into, but
Right.
they somehow, I guess, G.I. Joe team is doing maneuvers,
Yeah.
and this news crew just shows up on the battlefield, and they got to stop their war games.
Yeah. Which involve non-lethal lasers
Yeah.
and sacks of flour.
Yes. Well, the episode starts right in the middle of these maneuvers.
Yeah.
They don't indicate, and it takes a minute or two to realize that.
Right.
Okay, they're actually.
And once you see a Joe shoot a Joe, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And the sack of flour.
Right.
But
Yeah. So then Hector Ramirez comes in, and basically his whole rationale is he's doing a story on, he's presenting the possibility that the G.I. Joe anti-terrorist force is a waste of taxpayer money.
Right.
That it's a scam because Cobra, which is their main menace, is a fictitious creation that's been
Right.
designed to justify the creation and expenditure of money on this G.I. Joe task force, which I thought was a really interesting concept.
it is, but now you're saying it again. Like, to what end? Like, why would you, like, if it's to promote the idea that there are terrorists out there, like some people think, these days, that there's some fakery going on. But they never really get into the why of, like, why would the government be spending all of that money? Or do you think they're not really spending the money?
Does who think? Do I think, or
Do you
I?
think?
Wait a minute!
Or
Hey,
just-
don't let me in with Hector Ramirez.
Or does that conspiracy
he's just asking
theorist-
questions.
He's just, yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess if somebody's making money off it, and
The military-industrial complex.
the military-industrial complex, the munitions manufacturers, Tony Stark probably somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Don't ask me how he fits in, but he probably does, or his father or something, Stark Industries. And I guess the idea is that the thing that they're presenting is that it's some kind of self-perpetuating machine
Right.
that continues. Because they're also talking about how in this episode how they're wasting money on these things, like they're getting these big toys and everything,
Yeah.
and I guess maybe implicit in there is that there's a huge markup. I mean, like $600 toilet seats or something that
Right.
the Pentagon was ordering back then, and
Yeah.
that kind of thing is going on too. That it's some kind of shelter for this wasteful spending, and somebody's making lots of bucks off it.
Okay.
So I thought that was an
Except
interesting
that, no,
concept.
I did too. I just
Yeah.
didn't totally get into it.
No, they didn't. Matter of fact, they kind of abandoned that. I was really interested by that concept,
Right.
but that sort of was de-emphasized as the episode went on, and then at some point, when there's the big twist in the episode,
Yeah.
it really goes out the window, and that disappointed me.
Right. And then he basically bullies his way onto their base, which I find I don't know. I might be confusing it. In the comic, the base was underground, so it was kind of a secret. Clearly, there's a giant metal building
Yeah.
with a gun on it. So I guess people know where it is.
Yeah, it's not exactly incognito.
So they just let him on the base, and
Yeah, the security is non-existent, apparently.
right. And then Flint, who's one of the leader types, he pawns him off on Shipwreck, who is, I would call him. They really liked him on that cartoon. They used that character a lot.
Okay, yeah, he's definitely like the spotlight guy in this episode.
Yeah, and although someone addresses the incongruity of him, like being in the Rocky Mountains at some point, in general he was out of place because he's a sailor.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Navy sailor, and he's in his Navy the dungarees, I think, with the Gilligan hat.
Yeah.
Although flopped up, the way it's supposed to be, but it looks weird. And I remember thinking like the toy was kind of weird, like it's too brightly colored, and
Yeah.
like I think the idea, and they used it better in the comics, was all these people had specialties and they would only use them when they needed their specialty. Whereas on the cartoon, they're just sort of all
Interchangeable.
and they can all fly helicopters, they
right.
can all fly airplanes and do whatever.
Yeah, it seemed like there's not a whole lot of specialization of skills.
No. So anyway, he's touring the reporters around the base.
Yeah, he gives, and he's personally offended he's very offended by the notion that all this is fake.
Right.
And that as well, I can understand them all being upset at that,
Yeah.
but
He should have like
he
had
really
a
gets
scar,
upset.
like on his chest, like ripped open his shirt.
Yeah.
You think this is fake?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So he's determined, to kind of show them, what's real, but he's particularly defensive about these allegations that they're making.
Yeah.
And as a result, I guess that leads them to, well, he takes them basically, there's an alert that comes up.
Right.
Apparently they've got this detection system of the presence of cobra anywhere in the United States or something, which is a good thing to have, I'm sure.
Sure, yeah.
And it reports that, I guess cobra was sighted near like a chemical weapons stockpile is it the Rocky Mountains?
Yeah.
And so they get the notification.
Right.
And,
So the four of them pile into a 2-seat helicopter.
yes, Shipwreck and 3 civilians. Somebody from, I guess we should mention before, maybe we should mention now, so it's Shipwreck, Hector Ramirez's cameraman,
Yeah.
and Arnold, who is kind of a squirrely type person who's
Clutching some sort of bag or
Yes.
evidence.
yes, and is very jittery,
Yeah.
and seems to be the one that's like vocally against G.I. Joe, and
Right.
is really hitting that point home that it's all fake, and
Yeah.
constantly, saying, oh, Cobra, like that would really happen, and
Those-
this
those
person is,
liberal wet blanket types.
yes, I can't remember the interest group, but it was like not even a cool acronym. It was
Right.
like 4 consonants or something like that. Yeah, I'm from the CBRD,
Right.
And so Shipwreck takes 3 civilians in his aircraft.
In his 2-seat helicopter.
Yes. To go investigate the presence of Cobra near chemical weapons stockpile.
Right.
Lots of questions raised by that decision, but
Yeah.
so yeah, again, the general. It seems like they're not running exactly a tight ship there at GI Joe headquarters.
Well, the Duke, the other leader, seems to be off base for most of the episode. So
Duke was the one I remembered as their leader, and he's not.
Yeah.
He's not. Yeah. So
Right.
Flint's basically running the show, I guess.
Yeah, I think Flint. I think the figure was a warrant officer, which really, because I think Duke was a sergeant. I think I don't know. I think a warrant officer is actually higher up, a sergeant. But and then there was a character Hawk who in the comic books was definitely the leader, and at some point got promoted to general, and they did make a figure of that eventually. But like in the first figures, there was no clear cut line of command. I think in those miniseries, Duke is definitely in charge.
Well, it doesn't really seem like anybody's really in charge here.
No.
It seems like
They're busy
it's
playing
anything
pool.
goes. Yeah, that's right.
Watching Spider-Man on TV,
Yeah, I noticed that.
possibly reading a Spider-Man comic, too.
Yeah, these are like this is after the
In the
War
lounge,
Games
after the
maneuvers.
War
They're
Games.
just lounging around.
And making wiseacre comments.
Yeah,
This
a lot of banter going on.
Guy Alpine is the mountaineering expert.
Mhm.
It was a really cool looking figure, I gotta say. But he's kind of a jerk. He's just always giving everybody grief, especially Shipwreck. But
Yeah.
like he has a pithy remark about everything.
Yeah. So his behavior in this episode is not unusual for him.
I don't know. I mean,
Oh, okay.
no, I'm saying
you're
in that
saying in this episode.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
That
Right.
seems to be his defining
Yeah,
characteristic.
I'd agree with that.
So, yeah, in the lounge we have a bunch of people. But the speaking characters become part of it. We also have Spirit, the tracker, who's a Native American in a very brightly colored outfit, who has a pet eagle. Alpine's grossed out by that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you got a bird flying around in your living quarters, so I could.
Hey, I guess,
imagine
but
being
it's a
little
bald
upset.
eagle. It's the symbol of the United States.
Yeah, it might be the symbol of the United States, but he doesn't have to sleep next to me.
Yeah, okay.
Just saying.
Yeah. You got a point there. But he's like, "Ugh."
Yeah.
Like he's grossed out by just yeah.
He's not grossed out by America, is what I'm
No,
saying.
I don't think he is.
Right.
You got Covergirl, who I'm not sure what her job is on the cartoon. Like in the figure, she came with like a rocket launching kind of vehicle.
Yeah.
On the other episode I watched, Zartan, the villain, mentioned that she's a makeup expert.
Yeah, well, I was going to say with the name Covergirl,
Yeah.
I'm guessing that she was
I
not
think-
like a chemical engineer or something like that.
Right. And I think maybe the character had been a model before she joined the military.
Gotcha.
And then you have Gung Ho, who's a Marine, and again on the show he's just sort of gruff.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Cajun, but they don't really push that on the show.
That's too bad.
The comics definitely had him speaking some Cajun talk.
It's good.
Yeah. Is there anyone else in the crew? I think that was the crew, the basic crew. Like Scarlett's in the background reading the comic. So they're going on, but meanwhile Shipwreck is going off.
Yeah, and so they wander off to the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah.
Have to make a abrupt landing.
Right.
And they get captured essentially by Cobra.
Yeah. So they get spotted by Zartan and his dreadnoks. So just to explain what all of those words mean, I believe they're like not officially Cobra, but they're sort of like hired by Cobra, so they're mercenaries.
Mm-hmm.
Zartan, their leader, is a master of disguise. He also has some sort of weird genetic something going on, and so if he's in the sun, he can because he does it at some point, like he can make himself look camouflaged like a chameleon.
Yeah.
But the sun can also affect his skin or something. I don't know. The figure would turn green if you expose it to light.
Might I say that this is a good example of the kind of gritty realism that was totally ruined when they introduced Serpentor and characters like that. All right, sorry for that.
No. Zartan was probably the beginning of the end.
Okay.
And the Dreadnoks are essentially a biker gang or extras from a Mad Max movie, or just the way they drew punks in comic books in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
So there are like three of them. They all have Australian accents. There's Buzzer, who's the blonde guy with the ponytail. He has a chainsaw.
Yeah, I think the punk rock kind of thing is what they're going for there with the accents. That's a good.
I mean, that's what it looks like to
Yeah.
me. I saw them doing research. I saw the word biker gang used.
Yeah, or like a post-punk, or like an apocalyptic kind of Mad Max kind of.
Right. The interesting thing about the Buzzer character is his origin is that he was a professor at Oxford or Cambridge and went to study Australian biker gangs and then became one because he was so fed up with the world.
Wow.
And now he just wants to destroy stuff.
That's an interesting backstory. I'd
Yeah.
like to see that episode. I wonder if they had a whole episode spotlighting him.
I don't think so.
Man.
And the other two are Torch is one of them. He doesn't do much. He's the one who looks a little bit like Derek Smalls from Spinal Tap.
Okay.
And I think Ripper's the other one.
Hmm.
I have it written down. Yeah. He's the guy that kind of had a little bit of a mohawk and like a yellow spotted shirt. Anyway.
So these are all mercenaries, sort of affiliated with Cobra, but they're the ones that sort of put the finger on them.
Yeah, so they spot them and, And meanwhile, before they get captured, the other Joes have figured out that he's missing, and that group we were talking about, they go out to find him.
Yeah, because he had made some excuse, like he told somebody, he didn't tell somebody, hey, I'm going to take these civvies out to go find Cobra. He just said that he was giving them a tour or something like that.
Yeah. So they figured out where he was going, and they're coming out, and there's the Shipwreck and the civilians see like a missile thing. Because they had been shot at by a surface-to-air missile and SAM. And so Shipwreck manages to stop the missile launcher. But that's how they get captured. And then they get taken down to a giant underground Cobra base.
Yeah. And
it has movies.
Pardon me?
They have movie night.
Movie night at...
Yeah.
Yeah. Are they watching the original miniseries of G.I. Joe?
No, I forget what they there's like a PA announcement. It's something like Terror on the Ferris Wheel.
Yeah, something. Yeah, that's right, because they're making the public announcement of what's going on there on the base. So they got like a nice little functioning society at this Cobra base.
Yeah.
They got recreation, all kinds of things.
Access to the outdoors.
Yes. Probably not pretty bad compared to the G.I. Joe base. And it's probably a lot harder to get into the Cobra command center than it is the G.I. Joe base. So maybe that's not a bad deal living there.
I mean, they had to blindfold Shipwreck and the other people, but
now basically around here is where my interest in the episode took a nosedive. it crashed harder than Shipwreck and this crew, because we got to give a spoiler alert here.
Yeah.
Yes. But so Arnold, the very, I'm sure intentionally annoying character that was driving a lot of this skepticism about G.I. Joe.
Unattractive, too.
Yes. Clearly designed to be unappealing. And I was willing to put up with that. I'm like, okay, they're obviously making this character appealing. But, however, I got to admit, I didn't see this coming.
Okay.
I did not. I should have, in retrospect.
I think I thought at the beginning it was Zartan, the master of disguise. But then,
that would have made sense, yeah.
Then he just was hanging out in the base.
Yes. No, but it turns out Arnold unmasks and reveals as, I guess, the Baroness.
Right. I got to say, that was hilarious in a way. So he takes off this rubber mask.
Yeah.
And the very next shot, he's gone from being a lumpy dude.
Yeah.
He's still in the same outfit to a sexy woman.
Right. And he gained about, 18 inches in height.
Right. Lost quite a bit of weight. And
yeah, that was quite a transformation.
Yeah.
Well, you can't blame me for being fooled. I mean, obviously, that was one heck of a disguise to fool me for 10 or 11 minutes. But
right.
So basically, she reveals that her ruse was all a big scheme to. It was a morale kind of thing.
Yeah, to discredit the Joes.
To discredit the Joes and place doubt in the minds and that Cobra's a threat and everything and all this and it was kind of a cool stunt.
Right.
And I kind of chuckled at that twist, but to me the interesting part of the episode was like, oh wow, are they really going to explore this issue?
Yeah.
And really they weren't. They were just portraying it as like, well, I mean, we knew that Cobra existed.
Yeah.
So, but I would like to have seen them.
Yeah, what does the world within that world, the regular person really think of all this?
Right. Instead of setting up like this straw man argument, and then even worse, it's bad enough to make it like be this unappealing person and this like ambitious, smarmy Hector Ramirez character, and then it turns out, well, duh. So anybody that thought that this was true was stupid. I mean, there's no grounds for like a legitimate debate on like, well, to what extent does the presence of G.I. Joe make the presence of Cobra more likely? The kind of things like the Christopher Nolan Batman movies might have explored or whatever. And granted, this is a 20-minute episode of a cartoon designed to sell toys.
Right.
But I'm just saying that the interesting angle of the episode was a little bit ruined for me by that big reveal. So it rendered the Arnold character irrelevant.
Right.
And then the rest of the episode, they didn't really. It also kind of made the Hector Ramirez character a little irrelevant. Yeah. Granted, they're captives at that point, but it becomes much more. We kind of go into more like a straight action, I'd say, action adventure part of the episode, right?
Yeah. So the Zartan and the Dreadnoks and a bunch of Cobra guys go to steal gas. Meanwhile, Hector Ramirez offers to interview Cobra Commander. Yeah. Who, being a standard TV villain moron, an egomaniac, is all excited about that. And we do get kind of a funny scene where he's like telling his life story. Hector Ramirez is clearly bored out of his mind. Now he's like, talking about his military academy, trying to foster a rebellion at his military academy. Yeah, his first military academy, I think he says.
Well, he's a true believer.
The Cobra Commander?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what he believes in, but
right, he believes in something. I'm not sure exactly what Hector Ramirez was expecting to get.
Some scoop, I guess.
Yeah.
At least it wouldn't be. He thought it wouldn't be boring. I mean, it's a guy in a hood who talks like he's a snake.
Right. Well, I can't blame Hector Ramirez for that's a great exclusive.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the story he should really.
Yeah, and it was smart of him. He could tell that he could appeal to his egomania.
His vanity. Yeah. And also interesting, like at the time, Sean Penn, I guess, was watching this episode, and it inspired him. Like someday in the future, I might have the kind of juice to pursue an interview with, a notorious criminal figure. And he may have been heavily influenced by this episode.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have thought Sean Penn at sort of the height of his, well, not the height, but the beginning of his sort of career, his fame, and would have been watching G.I. Joe. But
he had a lot of downtime on sets,
Sean Penn is a mysterious guy.
He is. Yeah. Now, Hector Ramirez, he's not so mysterious. No. He's pretty much what you see is what you get here, I think. But he's not real thrilled by his exclusive, I guess. But good for him for thinking on his feet and taking advantage of the situation. I mean, he's not. You would almost expect him to be like cowering in fear when this turns out to be, this Cobra's real, and he's taken aback by it.
Right.
But he sees it as an opportunity. He doesn't like shiver and run. And if not for the Arnold character, I could see them doing a version of the episode where they just blame the whole media.
Yeah.
They have like this media stand-in character just be like some wimp that turns out to be just this blowhard liberal that winds up getting his comeuppance when he needs to get bailed out by the Joes. And that's really not how the episode plays out.
Right. They go and they steal the gas, but they don't just steal the main gas that the Joes are worried about is some sort of poison death gas or whatever that the military had decided we're not going to use this.
Yeah.
We're still going to stockpile it,
Yeah,
but
oh, yeah.
we're not going to use it.
Yeah.
But they notice, Dreadnoks notice that there are other gases there, and Zartan just says, take it all.
Why not?
You know, the poison gas, the itching gas,
Yeah.
the laughing gas.
Yeah.
Take it all.
You never know when you might need some of that stuff.
Yeah, and he comes back triumphant and is disappointed the Cobra Commander is not there to see his moment of triumph.
Yeah. Wanted a little credit for that.
Yeah, and then I believe by then the crew, the Cover Girl and Gung Ho and Alpine and Spirit oh, that's right, yeah, we got to talk about that. There was a pilot. I'm going to assume it was Wild Weasel, which was the name of the pilot that came with the Cobra Jet toy, hanging upside down from a tree from his parachute. Because, of course, on G.I. Joe, anytime you got shot down, you parachuted to safety.
Yes. Just deploy the chute and...
Yeah, it always worked, which is probably a reason they never defeated Cobra.
Yeah. Right.
You know.
It's kind of hard to eliminate the enemy when...
You can't eliminate them.
Right, when parachutes are so effective in that universe.
Yeah, and they start questioning it. It was just weird. Like, he seems worried, but I thought it was just because he's hanging upside down.
Right, it's like, I'll do any... he's like desperate.
Right, and then they cut, and there's a Black Panther in the tree branch trying to attack him.
Yeah, so that... No wonder he was so nervous, I guess.
Yeah, the famous Colorado Black Panther.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's almost like, yeah, so they help him.
Yeah.
But it's almost... You're right, that's a very weird scene. It's almost like he was caught by, like, the other side.
Yeah.
It's like... like, there's a chance that they might just abandon him or just shoot him there or something like that. Yeah,
Right.
that was a very weird moment.
So, yeah, and he tells them how to get in the base. So they're in the base, and then Shipwreck gets in one of the giant drills that they had to have in the Cobra base. And the long and the short of it is all of the laughing gas and itching gas explodes.
Yeah.
The poison gas seems fine. Everyone's aware of that and trying to avoid shooting it and stuff.
Yeah, that's good.
Which is good.
Civil behavior, yes.
Suggests Cobra's more competent than they seem.
Right.
And everyone just bursts into fits of laughter.
Yeah, now this totally redeemed the episode for me here.
Yeah.
I love this part.
And they're laughing hysterically and like saying things like the whole place is gonna blow and
Right, while they're laughing, like
Right.
there's gonna be a terrible cave in. Yeah. It's gonna crush us all,
Yeah.
And they're laughing and they're throwing their heads back and smiling and everything.
Right. And meanwhile, back at the base, Duke has arrived, and he and Flint now have come out to find out what's going on.
Yeah, to clean up this mess.
Right. So they arrive just as the entire mountain collapses. Not just the base, but the entire mountain,
entire mountain.
disappears from view.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, that must be where they are.
Yeah, they're sharp.
Yeah. And everybody's stumbling out of the... I mean, we don't know how... We know Cobra escaped, but we don't really see them escape. But
Yeah.
but the Joes and Hector and his cameraman stumble out of the cave, and they're still laughing.
Yeah.
And
What an adventure.
yeah,
And then-
Duke's like, "What's going on?"
Yeah.
And Hector Ramirez kisses him on the cheek
Yeah.
and kind of explains.
Yeah,
something.
he starts to, yeah.
And then Duke's, I don't want to know.
Yeah. This was a good ending.
Right.
It was a good ending.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, now we can go back, but this might be a good time to mention.
Yeah.
That was the actual ending on the version that we watched.
Right.
It was missing something, though.
Is missing something.
A big part of the G.I. Joe cartoon, and actually something
Yeah.
I remembered more than the actual G.I. Joe episodes.
Right.
Was the PSAs that would, the morals that would show up.
Exactly. A G.I. Joe character would... Some kids would be doing something that was dangerous, or they just shouldn't be doing, and a G.I. Joe character would show up and give them a little lesson, and the kids would say, "Oh, now we know," and the Joe would say, "Knowing is half the battle."
Indeed.
G.I. Joe. Yeah, it wasn't on there, which was disappointing. Almost as disappointing as far as I can tell right now. There's no record on the internet of which PSAs aired with which episodes. I'm trying to find out because I want to put it on the end of this.
Yeah, and if there's no record on the internet, it probably doesn't exist anywhere.
Yeah, the only record I could find was of parodies. There's some famous, in quotes, parodies from the early aughts.
Yeah.
That some guy did. He did 25 of them.
And I'm sure he did
and
a
he
great
just
job.
dubbed in other audio. And I'm sure they're fine. But
the original ones are entertaining enough for me right now.
Yeah. So I want to know what one aired. And now the question we were talking about off air was that, maybe different. It wasn't always the same one with an episode.
Yeah.
That somehow, however they fed these to the stations, that they could feed different ones.
Right.
Which maybe, you worked in the television industry for a while.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I did work in the television industry, and I was involved in many key production maneuvers like that.
Like putting PSAs on, right?
Yes, exactly.
That was one of your main jobs, right?
Well,
Was it?
in addition to running the whole enterprise, if you want to say that. But no, yes, one of the things was prepare tapes for broadcast, and part of that was like traffic duties, like putting on PSAs, promos, and things like that. And yes, I very much enjoyed that part of the job because there were certain PSAs that I loved. Unfortunately, I didn't have access to any of the Knowing is Half the Battle PSAs, but I would have made good use of them if I did.
So if a show, and this was on a local access channel, is that what you call it?
Government access.
So a thing would air, and then would you do something to make the PSA air right? After that?
Well, what we'd do is we'd have the broadcast tape, and then we'd transfer it. We'd basically redub the program onto another tape and slap this information on it. And a lot of it was in order to get an exact timing for our broadcast clock. So, yeah.
Okay.
So it's possible that has something to do with this.
Yeah. There are far fewer PSAs than episodes. So
do you know how many? Do we know how many PSAs there are? We just don't know which ones went with.
No, I just know those would repeat even more than the episodes did.
Yeah.
Which was a lot. In a given week, you were probably maybe only going to see one or two new episodes, and then get a bunch of reruns.
It irritates me that they aren't attached to these episodes.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I did read that they're on some of the Shout Factory DVDs, but I don't know if they're just as a bonus or they're on the episodes.
I might have to investigate that.
Yeah.
Is it possible that all these Knowing is Half the Battle PSAs are stored safely in the Rocky Mountains along with the military's supply of poison gases?
I hope so, but I would think Cobra would want to steal those too, because what would inspire chaos more than not knowing?
Right, not knowing. Yeah. If knowing is half the battle, you're
not knowing.
You're at a 50% disadvantage if you don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe that guy that did those parodies was a Cobra operative.
Hey.
And he was trying to hurt Americans' morale by destroying their social fabric.
That could be.
And now we don't have access to all these PSAs. Some of these are available.
Yeah.
I watched a few of them earlier, but
right.
It
I just
did
want
feel
to
a little
know
empty.
the one that should air with this episode.
Right.
To get the full experience. Or any would be fine, but for accuracy. So
not knowing it kind of bothers you a little bit.
It does.
I don't blame you for that.
So is it about skateboarding? Is it about fire?
Yeah, and the moral wasn't direct. In some of the the Filmation shows, a lot of times they would tie the moral directly into that episode.
Yeah, I don't think
this was not the case. They were more generic things. Yeah, they were everyday situations. They didn't say so the moral of this episode is, stockpile your poison gases very carefully,
right? Because
they're liable to get blown up or stolen or something like that.
Yeah.
It was more, like you said, going out swimming and not going out swimming after half hour after eating or something like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Didn't Super Friends have things like that sometimes?
Yes, on one version, on at least one version of the Super Friends, they would have those safety tips and things like that.
Yeah.
Nutrition, but the safety tips are some of the more memorable ones about looking both ways when you cross the street and
yeah.
So and
the He-Man ones, because he wasn't in our universe, he would just address the camera.
Yeah, I don't remember the He-Man one so much, but yeah, that was like a Filmation standard, and those are some of the things that people love today and want to see, but a lot of times those are the ones that aren't associated or they don't come out with the DVD releases, and that's
Yeah. Do you
a
think
real bummer.
is it like maybe some of the lessons are not good lessons anymore?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what
You know,
we were
that they-
teaching
the-
kids in the 80s that would not be valid now.
The DVD makers hire a new educational consultant
Well,
because of course G.I. Joe had an education consultant.
right.
You know, some guy with a PhD.
Yeah.
So,
I hope it's
and
not the
they're
guy.
well, you know, our thoughts on playing with fire have changed.
Yeah. Or, you know, we decided after we've got a lot of kids that have been touching hot stoves because of these cartoons that told them it's okay. You know, we got to change that now.
Right.
You should not hold reach for a hot stove or a hot pan on a stove. I mean, what's controversial about it that would have changed now? That's what I'm kind of trying to figure out.
I don't know. I mean, well, we now know that cocaine is not good for you.
Yeah.
In the 80s, we were still on the fence about that.
Yeah. It was more neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, we got to scrap the talk to strangers moral for this episode. Just rerun the fire one. Okay. Yeah, it's
We're not sure. Shipwreck explaining trickle-down economics. That theory's not as solid as it seemed in 1985.
Yeah. So speaking of that, do you think G.I. Joe is a reflection of the 1980s? I mean, nowadays looking back, it's like Reagan, gung-ho, military.
I kind of feel like it is. I mean, not. I don't think. Like, I don't feel like there's an agenda on the show to necessarily push any kind of message, but I think it is just the fact when I read that, and I'd read the things about the FCC regulations changing, but then one of the things I read, you know, explicitly mentioned Reagan and of course all his desire to deregulate things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, this really is the perfect Reagan era
Yeah.
cartoon. I mean, it's kind of jingoistic and definitely not pro, but I mean, showing a positive version of the military.
Yeah, it's very
military
pro-military,
industrial
yeah.
complex.
Sure.
Like that, I assume this cartoon wouldn't have been as popular during the Vietnam era.
Well, during the Vietnam era, I think is when they sort of transitioned G.I. Joe from being a pure military toy to
being
doing the kung fu, the infamous
Right,
kung
yeah.
fu grip, and making him more of like a secret agent and like an interchangeable type character,
Yeah.
and de-emphasizing the military aspect. So
Right.
I think you're correct on that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if there were a lot of pro-war, pro-military cartoons in the 1970s.
No.
But yeah, I think I'd agree with you on that. It's not.
Yeah, you know, and because just reading through some of the plots, I'm sure there are a lot of sort of 80s music-looking kind of things too, and like fashion. And,
Yeah.
I mean, those dreadnoughts are sort of like a lot of sleeveless shirts and stuff like that seem very 80s.
Right.
If you think about Gem, which was made by the same
Uh,
people, you know, obviously that looked very 80s because it was.
If you want to hear us talk about Jim, folks, let us know. It could be fodder for a future episode.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sure we'd have a lot to talk about with that one. Sorry to interrupt you.
no, I definitely.
It's not overtly political.
Right.
It's of its time, but it's not overtly political in the sense that it's, you know, but yeah, just, I mean, I guess I could see people arguing that, yeah, it's pro-military just by its presence and everything
Yeah.
like that. And back then, I mean, terrorism was a whole different thing. It was more like Nicaragua and that kind of thing.
Right, I mean-
Contras against, you know, as opposed to, you know, sort of what we have now with, like, you know, different non-state terrorist groups and everything. It was basically United States versus the Soviet Union, and
Yeah, I mean, there was terrorism in the Middle East,
yeah,
and I mean so people were familiar with that word, but it wasn't
right. It was more
didn't-
isolated incidents like
Yeah.
airplane hijacking,
Stuff that
things
happened
like that.
in-
Stuff, yeah,
in Ireland or
yeah,
the Middle East. It's something that was on the news every day. Now, speaking of that, like Cobra's agenda, they apparently want to take over the world,
of course, yeah.
but they don't seem to have any reason for wanting to take over the world.
Well,
You know, I mean, say what you will about Hitler,
I'm anxious to see where this is going.
but he did.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening to the podcast. This is the final episode of the Battle of the Network shows. We'll be back with a new podcast once Mike changes his identity. I disassociate myself with this series. Okay, so let's back it up there. Say what you will about Hitler.
He had a identifiable agenda.
Yes.
Not
Wouldn't argue with
not
that.
one that anyone approves of here.
No,
But
of course not.
Cobra's, I don't know what their motivation is. Like
Okay.
if I were an actor playing Cobra Commander, I would
You'd
I
be
would be
looking-
lacking in information.
You'd be looking for yeah.
Yeah.
So wanting to take over the world is it's a little sketchy. It's
Like, what are they going to do when they take over the world?
well, maybe give everybody cool underground bases and have movie night every night.
Yeah.
It could be. They could have a benign purpose for it, I guess.
Right. I mean, I'm almost more like if they just wanted to create chaos of like they were anarchists, I would be more understanding of that.
Yeah.
It's just like they're just kind of mean hooligans.
Yeah.
But because they're, I think, in creating Cobra, we're blending sort of images of terrorists and fascists and supervillains.
You're looking for a clear mission statement. It sounds like from
Yeah.
Cobra about what exactly
Right.
their end game is.
Yeah. And I don't remember one from the comics either, so I'm not going to excuse that. But
Yeah.
I don't think they were buffoons in the comics.
No.
Where, on the cartoon, of course, I guess you just have to.
Right. They kind of get egg in their face every episode.
Yeah, and you wonder, well, how did they accomplish anything other than because they have hundreds of people, thousands of soldiers, and cool vehicles.
Yeah. They
But then really, G.I. Joe doesn't. I mean, all they do is stop them from doing a bad thing, but then they don't.
seek to eradicate them.
No.
That's a good point. Yeah. It's like this sort of like, which sort of plays into the points raised by Hector Ramirez and Arnold.
Yeah.
Are they basically just playing war games with each other, and there's like this endless balance, and it's always going to go on forever, and it's like a self-perpetuating battle so Joe keeps getting funding, and if it eradicated Cobra,
Right.
then it would have no reason to exist.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Jeez, I'm starting to agree with Arnold, and
Yeah.
maybe Hector Ramirez was onto something.
Maybe the Baroness was in playing the Arnold character was expressing her own frustration with because she just she probably just wants to win.
Yeah,
It doesn't seem like G.I. Joe. As long as they stop the bad thing, that's enough.
right. They can just go back to their base and
Right.
play pool and
Although I got to question her strategy too. It's like she was in the G.I. Joe base.
yeah, that's right.
She could have caused a lot of damage.
She could have, and instead, she decided the psychological damage that she was.
Right. And then maybe she was gathering intel.
True.
Oh, they have a pool table.
Yeah, they can use a lot with that.
Yeah. Oh. We need a pool table.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so Cobra can whip up some like exploding billiard balls to
Right,
to
yeah.
have shipped to the. I think isn't that how he tried to kill Castro in the '60s? Was some
Exploding
exploding billiard balls. I don't think that worked either.
No.
But yeah, she must have had a healthy respect for Hector Ramirez. I mean, that 20 Questions must be a very popular show.
Yeah.
For her to choose him as the vehicle to get this message out, she must have thought it was going to have a big impact.
Yeah. Popular, but she could also see that his ambition would outstrip his maybe journalistic ideals.
Yes. So hopefully she had other plans.
Yeah. Yeah, she might have had contingency plans.
Yeah, although she did seem
Maybe in the
like
folds of her turtleneck, she
Yeah.
had like hand grenades and stuff.
yeah. Eventually, she was going to do that stuff. She was a little irritated that she had to reveal her true self when she did it.
Yeah, because I don't think obviously they didn't plan on the helicopter trip.
Yeah, they didn't think that one of the Joes would take them back to the very
Right.
base. So, I think my favorite character... Well, okay, so my favorite G.I. Joe character, probably the toy-wise, was Snake Eyes.
Yeah.
But he wasn't in this episode.
No.
Was he even a part of the team yet?
Oh yeah, he was one
Okay.
of the original
Oh, okay.
figures. So I think in their de-emphasis of other characters in favor of the new toys, you don't really see him. Like Scarlet was one of the first characters, and
Right.
she's just in the background.
Yeah.
So I think just they had to highlight these other people. So I don't remember him being a huge. Well, no, he was a presence of the cartoon because they had some of the ninja stuff going on.
Yeah,
at some
I mean,
point.
ninjas, again, being a big craze in the 1980s.
Yeah. And in the comic books, he was like the compelling character
Yeah.
because he was mysterious and he couldn't talk and
Yeah, he looked cool.
he looked cool and
Yeah,
eventually you
simple
found out he was a ninja. And you learned some of his backstory and it was interesting. Yeah, I liked him. I mean, I liked a lot of the ones that didn't show up in this.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was just the look of them. I thought they were a cool figure. Like there was a snow job who was like their Arctic soldier at a snowmobile. I thought he was pretty cool.
Yeah. Now, as a pro wrestling guy, I got to bring up Sergeant Slaughter.
That I
And
was
he
going to mention him as one of
bit-
the other things that
Okay, he
turned
was a
me
little
off.
bit later, and that was like a blatant.
Yeah.
Everything about that seemed contrived.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and I remember him. He was wrestling in the AWA at that time, which is already kind of on the downslope. And I guess part of the reason he left WWF was disputes over merchandising or anything. So he had some kind of deal. It seemed like he was pushing toys while he was wrestling. I mean, the whole thing seemed very weird to me. And it seemed like he became less of a wrestler. But in the GI Joe universe, it was treated like he was like Hulk Hogan at the time, which he wasn't really at that level. So.
And was also somehow a member of the team.
Yeah, well, he was a sergeant.
Yeah.
So did he outrank?
I don't know. See, that's I think I just stopped watching like the cartoon by then, and it's only so this original series is only, it's cartoon length seasons, but it's only 2 seasons. It's 85 and 86.
Yeah.
And 86 is like reading through those. That's already they've introduced him and Serpentor and like all the stuff I didn't care for. So I just remember not liking that, and I feel like maybe he showed up in toy commercials or something.
Yeah, I remember. I think there was a big push, and there's a big push, and I just remember he would like come down to the ring, like waving out little flags, and they'd be playing, I think, the same song that they would use like in the commercials.
Right.
It was like Sergeant Slaughter, and then all of a sudden it would go, now with G.I. Joe, G.I. Joe, and then they would go into like the Real American Hero part. It was this awkward melding of just pasting this Sergeant Slaughter bit onto the G.I. Joe theme song. But
I'm glad to hear that didn't play well in the wrestling fandom either.
Well, it didn't with me.
Yeah.
It didn't with me, but I wasn't going to cheer for Boris Zukov against Sergeant Slaughter, so it wasn't like I hated the guy. But I wasn't a G.I. Joe loyalist, so I wasn't. I was more offended on the wrestling end of it, not offended by G.I. Joe being infiltrated by Sergeant Slaughter, because at that point, I'm sure that I wasn't really into G.I. Joe.
Now, do you know about the other real life member of the team?
I do not. Let me know.
They made a figure of the Refrigerator Perry.
Whoa.
He was their PT instructor.
Their
physical training instructor.
Okay, wait a minute now. Okay, is this an exceedingly rare figure?
I don't think so.
Is this something that I might be able to find on eBay, say? And
probably, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do it before this episode comes out. So everybody's going to drive up the price knowing that I want it. But
right.
Wow, I got to see that. Yeah,
I think he's just in his uniform.
Okay. So,
I don't even know if he came with a helmet.
Huh. William the Refrigerator Perry.
Yeah, he might have been
instructor. No camo pants or anything.
No.
Huh.
I don't think it's rare. I don't know. It might have been a mail-in, so it could be a little rare.
Huh. Maybe seeing it would jog my memory, but yeah, I have no recollection of that. Seems like something I would have probably wanted to get at the time, actually. So yeah, that's cool. So William Perry, Sergeant Slaughter were real life Joes.
Yeah.
Cool. And William Perry was never in the cartoon.
I don't think so.
Probably not. The timing, I guess, like
just
the
80, production level or the production cycle and the relatively short cycle of his fame.
It was like the 85, Bears and stuff.
Right.
Like, yeah, it would have been. So the toy probably came out
like
after
86.
the peak of his fame.
Probably.
Yeah. Nice cash grab there.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I was not aware of that. So, yeah, 20 questions. So what'd you think? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
In between. I think it was in, the parts we said we liked.
Yeah.
We liked.
I love that part of it, yeah. Love the end. Loved Hector Ramirez.
The whole cartoon had a very kind of sci-fi feel to it. I mean, not this episode wasn't so sci-fi, but there was a lot of that going on. I mean, obviously they're all using laser guns, but they would have a lot of weird stuff happen. I don't know how I feel about that, but and it is a giant commercial, and I already think aired my issues with Shipwreck.
Yeah.
Who apparently, and it makes sense, was based on Jack Nicholson.
What? Like the last detail, Jack Nicholson?
Yeah.
Oh man, okay.
So at least the voice characterization.
I'm gonna have to watch that again, maybe.
Yeah.
Not just for Hector Ramirez, but to see that Shipwreck is Jack Nicholson. I didn't pick up on.
No,
that.
one thing I liked he did when he got shot in the War Games, he did like this cool death death take.
Yeah,
He did all sorts of like
kind
sort of gymnastic stuff.
Yeah, right. He was into it.
Yeah, I think my memory of the cartoon is that he was in every episode. It's like, I want to see someone else,
That's I didn't really remember that character at all.
So the other one I watched involved them. Someone was making a G.I. Joe movie, and they brought some of them in to be consultants because the director wasn't satisfied with the realism what they were getting, and then they had on loan some like captured Cobra vehicles. And one of those had a tracking device that would send it right back to the Cobra base.
That nobody had disabled?
Right. So the Cobra people were trying to get that vehicle back.
Huh.
And all this stuff happened. And the Joes kept ruining the movie.
Now, wait a minute. Now, why would the Cobras want to get that vehicle back when that could be like a cool like spy device, right?
It would take it back to the Cobra base.
It would take what back?
The Cobra vehicle would fly back to the Cobra base.
Oh, okay.
Like a homing beacon.
Okay, I thought it was like a camera. I thought there was some kind of like camera recording device in there.
No. So it would lead them.
Oh, got it. Okay. So yeah, they definitely don't want that out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Zartan and his crew were there, and then Shipwreck and CoverGirl and a couple other, a dude with a dog, Mutt.
Yeah.
A couple other guys were there, and it just I don't know. Part of it disappointed me because their depiction of movie making was not horribly outlandish.
You're looking for like a European director with a mustache and
no,
throwing down
I was
megaphones.
looking for like some of the like that's another one of those things that kind of like I get fascinated by when they do that in movies and seem to be getting it wrong. Mm-hmm. Like, how do they get it wrong? It's what they do.
Yeah, how can you?
Like the one thing that kind of bothers me for some reason is the sort of where like you start a scene and you think it's a real scene. And then it turns out they're filming a scene, but the way you watch it in the movie is still cut together like a movie. It's like, well, that's not how they would have filmed it, because you had to film this in multiple takes. So it's not like they would have filmed it in one take and somehow gotten all these different shots.
Oh.
It always throws me out. I'm just like, well, how do you get that wrong? I mean, maybe it's just a choice. I shouldn't be bothered by it. It's a storytelling choice.
Well,
but that's like why I get fascinated by the depiction of music too, since it's pretty tangential to that industry, and yet they seem to get that a little wrong too. Or well, journalism I kind of picked this one too because of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's always kind of depicted in a weird.
Yes, I'm a little saddened that you were so disappointed by the lack of realism in so many of these episodes, Mike. Like this G.I. Joe universe was not getting it done for you.
That one disappointed me because it kind of was. I mean, the director director was sort of obnoxious, but he ended up he finally got the shot he wanted because he had a bunch of cameras rolling when they actually had a battle, a real battle, and one of them survived. I think one of the cameras. Anyway, the movie turned out great.
Well, that's good.
They all the Joes got to show up in their tuxedos.
I'm sure it was a blockbuster.
Yeah.
You think it opened anywhere near Oliver Stone's Platoon?
Near the same time? Or
yeah, that's like in the same time frame.
I don't know. Probably, yeah. Maybe that's, well, if Arnold had actually been Arnold, maybe that would have been one of the things that sparked him.
Right. Yeah, maybe.
They're making a movie about it.
Yeah, Platoon was a response to this G.I. Joe movie.
Right.
I like this intersection of real life and G.I. Joe we've come across today.
They should make an Oliver Stone figure.
An Oliver Stone action figure?
Yeah.
Yes. That'd be pretty good.
I'd like to see that.
So, G.I. Joe, a real American hero, after all these years, 30 years later, what
some things from your childhood hold up.
Yeah.
Some things don't.
I gotta say, I might watch a few more episodes. Some of the things like you're talking about have kind of made me interested.
Yeah.
In kind of checking out some certain, very targeted watch of certain episodes.
Right.
I think I would do.
Yeah, I think that's about all I would do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to binge watch 100 episodes of
Yeah.
G.I. Joe anytime soon. I don't regret being into that at the time, into the toys or anything.
No, hey, I'm not.
Can't take it back.
Right.
So
I wouldn't try to attempt to hold that against you.
No, I don't know if I would have gotten into them if a kid hadn't bought them for my birthday though.
Right. Yeah, it was more superheroes. Yeah. Superheroes for me, and I never got heavily into G.I. Joe, but
yeah, I'd be more curious to look at some of the comics again.
Okay.
I think they'll have the same issues that any comic from that era has, other than the silent issue, which won't have too much narration because it doesn't have any.
Right.
On a scale of 4 yo's, I'll give it 2.5 yo's.
2.5 yo's?
Yeah, right.
Okay, that seems like a fair assessment. I don't know if this is the first one and only one I've seen in a long time, so I guess I would 2.5 yo's. I guess I'd give it a 2.
Yeah.
It started out as a high 3 and then went down way down with a big reveal and then gained maybe a half a yo by the uproarious laughing gas scene at the end.
All right.
This episode not brought to you by G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero toys from Hasbro. Really. The FCC says we can't do it. We mean it. This episode also brought to you by MSNBC, welcoming Hector Ramirez. You're not the only ones with a mustachioed Latino muckraker anymore, Fox News. This episode also brought to you by Cobra. Sure, we want to take over the world, but just so we can own all this stuff. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/battleofthenetworkshows.
Can I skate with you?
Nah, you're just a girl.
No kidding.
Go ho!
Let her try. You might be surprised.
Okay, but thanks.
Wow, look at that.
Don't judge people till you give them a chance.
Because there's a chance you could be wrong. Now we know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!